Edric stepped onto the frozen surface of the creek and felt it give, not slowly, not with warning. One foot plunged through to the knee, and the cold hit him like a struck bell, the sound of it ringing up through his shin and into his teeth. He grabbed for the bank and caught only mud. His pack swung forward with the weight of 2 weeks of supplies and pulled him sideways. He went in to the hip before his boot found the gravel bottom. "Get up," he told himself. He got up. The far bank was 4 steps away, and he crossed it, dripping, dragging his pack behind him. He stood in the thin brush and looked back at the hole he had made. The ice had already begun to drift in around the edges. He had seen the trail marker and thought the creek was still solid. He had been wrong. He wrung out what he could from his coat sleeve and kept moving. He had to keep moving. The trail to Halvard's mill was another 8 miles by his reckoning, possibly more, and he had made this walk before, though not in this body, not with these legs that still did not quite belong to him after 18 months of marching and 6 months of trying to forget what marching had cost. The hills above the Vorath passes had their own climate and their own opinion of people who made assumptions about frozen things. Within an hour, the shivering had moved inward. That was how he understood it. When cold lives only on the surface of you, in your hands and ears and the tip of your nose, it is manageable. When it moves inside and makes a home behind your ribs, something else is happening. He knew what that something else was. He had watched it happen to others, and he had simply hoped, which is to say, that he had been foolish in the ordinary way that people are foolish when they do not want to believe what they already know. He made it perhaps another mile before his legs began to feel borrowed. The slope here was gentle, but his feet were not placing themselves properly, and twice he caught himself against a pine trunk with his shoulder rather than his hands, which meant his hands were not working as sentinels anymore. He sat down against a boulder. He told himself he was sitting down to think. He was not sitting down to think. He was sitting down because sitting down was the only thing he had left. The boulder was broad enough to shelter him from the wind coming down the ridge, and there was a smell of old smoke nearby, wood smoke, the kind that comes not from a new fire, but from rock and earth that have absorbed years of it. He noticed this distantly. He noticed also that his pack was still strapped to him, and that this was good, because his pack had dry clothes in an oilskin pouch at the bottom of it. And if he could get to those clothes, he might be able to change and then get back on the trail before the cold settled any deeper into him. He reached back for the buckle on his pack strap, and his fingers refused the assignment. He sat there with his hand behind his back and his fingers doing nothing useful, and he thought, with a strange clarity that comes sometimes when things have become genuinely bad, that this was a ridiculous way to die. Not heroic, not violent, not the way things had gone in the Vorath passes. Just a man who stepped through ice because he was not paying attention, sitting against a rock with his hand behind his back, like a man reaching for something he has already dropped. He heard a sound. It was not loud. It was the sound of something large moving through brush without particular concern for being quiet, the way something moves when it is not afraid of being heard because it is not afraid of what might hear it. He turned his head in the direction of the sound and saw, emerging from between 2 pine trunks, a figure that was not human. She was a wolf woman. He knew this the way you know a thing that your eyes and your brain agree on without needing to negotiate. She stood a full head taller than most men he had met in the South, and her shoulders were broad under a coat made of layered hides stitched together with dark cord. Her hair was kept back with a strip of leather, and it was the color of winter ash, pale and thick, with darker streaks running through it like shadow on snow. Her ears rose through her hair, pointed and furred at the edges, angled slightly toward him as she emerged from the tree line, already reading him before she had finished looking. Her canines were prominent when she breathed, the upper ones sharp and clean, the way things are when they are well maintained. Her eyes were amber, the particular amber of late afternoon through pine resin, and they held neither welcome nor hostility, just assessment. She was carrying over one shoulder a brace of hares and a bundle of cut wood. She had stopped at the edge of the brush and was looking at him with an expression that had nothing in it of surprise. "You are wet," she said. Her voice was low and carried the accent of the hill country, the vowels pulled long and the consonants placed with care. "And you are sitting?" "I know," he said. His own voice came out thinner than he intended. She did not say anything for a moment. She looked at him the way someone looks at a problem they did not create, but are nonetheless standing in front of. "How far are you going?" she said. It was not quite a question. "Halvard's Mill." "You will not make it." "I am aware of that possibility," he said. She set the wood down. She did not set the hares down, just the wood, and she stood with her hands on her hips and looked at him for a moment longer. Then she looked up at the slope above him, at the sky, at the position of the pale light behind the overcast. She was calculating something. He could see it in her face. The quality of attention that people have when they are working out a problem they did not choose. "There is a shelter," she said. "Half a mile up. I use it in the season. You can get dry there and stop being stupid about your situation." "I am not sure I can walk half a mile," he said. "I know," she said. "That is why I did not say walk." His name was Edric Holn, and he had been many things before he came to be sitting against that boulder with non-functional hands. He had been a soldier, specifically a foot soldier in the 3rd column of the Meridian Army during the 3 years of the Vorath campaign, which was what the generals called it, and what the men who survived it called other things that were not fit for riding. He had been, before that, a cooperative apprentice in the town of Seld, which was a small town on the edge of the Middle Plains that smelled of sawdust and the river, and had a festival every late summer where everyone got moderately drunk on plum spirits and danced in the square. He had liked Seld. He had liked the cooperative. He had liked the smell of wood shavings and the particular satisfaction of a barrel hoop seated exactly right. He had not gone back to Seld when the campaign ended. There were reasons for this that he had not fully explained to anyone, including himself. His sergeant, a man named Holt, had gone back to his village and his wife and his children and had reportedly taken up keeping bees, which Edric thought was either the most peaceful thing a man could do after the Vorath passes, or the most terrifying, depending on what you thought about things that stung you without warning. Several of the other survivors had gone home or found new homes or simply disappeared into the country the way water disappears into dry ground. Edric had taken work where he could find it, transport contracts mostly, moving goods between towns that were far enough apart that nobody expected you to stay. He was on this road because he had taken a contract to deliver a package of sealed documents to a factor in Halvard's Mill. The factor's name was Morn, and Edric did not know Morn or care about Morn, but the fee was fair and the distance was walkable in 2 days under reasonable conditions, and Edric had learned that the best way to keep moving was to find a reason to move. He had not planned to fall through ice. He had not planned to get sick. He had not planned to end up half frozen against a boulder in the hills above the Voreth foothills, being looked at by a wolf woman who was deciding in her own time and for her own reasons what to do about him. Her name was Druva. She told him this when she was helping him out of his wet coat in the shelter, which was a low stone building built into the hillside with a sod roof and a door made of fitted planks. It was not comfortable, but it was tight against the wind, and there was a small iron stove in the corner that she had a fire going in before he had finished looking around. She told him her name the way you give someone a tool they might need, briefly, without ceremony. "Druva," she said. "So you know what to call me if you need something." "Edric," he said. "I know," she said. "Your pack has your name on it, the strap buckle." He looked at his pack. There was indeed a small brass plate on the strap buckle with his name stamped into it. He had forgotten it was there. He had been carrying it for 3 years, and he had forgotten it was there. "Take off the wet things," she said. "I am not going to look." She turned to the stove with her back to him, and he took off the wet things with fingers that were beginning to work again in the heat, though slowly, like old hinges in spring. He got into the dry clothes from the oilskin pouch. They were not warm yet, but they were dry, and the distinction mattered. He sat on a low bench along the wall and wrapped himself in his bedroll blanket and tried to assess how bad things were. They were bad. He knew the signs. The shivering had settled into something rhythmic and involuntary, and behind his eyes there was a dull pressure that he associated with fever starting. His throat felt narrow. He had been run down for days before this walk, had not eaten well, had slept in a series of cold rooms in various waypoints along the road, and the creek had been the occasion rather than the cause. "You have been sick for a while," Druva said, without turning around. "I did not think it was serious," he said. "People rarely do," she said. She said it without judgment, or at least without the kind of judgment that had an edge to it. She made tea from something she had in a pouch on her belt. It was dark and tasted of bark and something bitter and something else he could not name. And it was hot, and she handed it to him in a clay cup that she produced from a niche in the wall with the ease of someone reaching for a familiar thing. He drank it. She sat on the opposite bench and ate a piece of hard bread and looked at the stove. Her ears moved slightly as the wind shifted outside, tracking the sound of it, independent of any effort on her part. He noticed this the way he noticed her hands when they were still, slightly broader at the knuckle than a human woman's, with short, dense nails, capable looking. He noticed these things in the clinical way that sick people notice details, because the fever had not yet taken his eyes, only his legs and his hands. "I have to get to Halvard's Mill," he said. "I have a delivery." "How urgent?" she said. "I do not know. The factor's letter did not say." "Documents," she said, glancing at his pack. "Yes." She was quiet for a while. Outside, the wind moved through the pines, and the stove ticked and popped as the metal expanded. He could feel the tea doing something to the tightness in his throat, loosening it slightly, though the pressure behind his eyes had not moved. "You cannot walk 8 miles in this condition," she said. "I know. If you stay here through the night, you may be in worse condition by morning." "That is also possible," he said. She looked at him, not unkindly, but with the directness of someone who does not see the point in circling what is true. "I am going to the lower valley tomorrow. There is a trading post at Keld's Crossing, which is 5 miles below Halvard's mill. I have goods to bring down." She paused. "I can carry you." He looked at her. She was watching him with an expression that was not offering charity. She was offering a solution to a logistics problem, and she was waiting to see if he understood the difference. "That is a long carry," he said. "I know what it is," she said. "Why?" he said. She considered this for a moment. "Because you will die otherwise. And you sitting dead on this hill is a complication I do not need. And because someone should have told you about the creek crossing before you tried it in this season, and nobody did, which is not your fault." It was, he thought, possibly the most practical reason anyone had ever given for saving his life. He had heard more stirring justifications in the Vorath passes, and none of them had been more honest. "All right," he said. "All right," she said, and went back to eating her bread. She did not carry him like an object. That was the first thing he understood about how she moved. She had a frame on her back built from bent wood and cross straps, the kind of thing used for hauling loads down mountain paths, and she had modified it. He could see, with a seat lashed to it and a second set of straps that went across her chest and under his knees. It was not comfortable. It was a long way from comfortable. But it was engineered, and she had engineered it. And when she settled the frame onto her back and he felt himself lifted off the ground, he had the brief, vertiginous sense of the world rearranging itself. He could not talk much by then. The fever had moved in properly during the night and settled like a tenant who has paid 3 months in advance and intends to stay. He had slept badly and woken twice, and found each time that Dhruva was awake also, tending the stove with the patient economy of someone who understands that small fires require more attention than large ones. Her amber eyes had caught the light both times, briefly luminous in the way that animal eyes caught fire, and she had looked at him once and said nothing, which was a sufficient communication that he was being monitored. She had given him more of the bark tea before they left. She had also made him eat a small amount, hard cheese and dried meat, and had watched him eat it with the same calm monitoring a blacksmith applies to a piece of work being tempered. She wanted to make sure it stayed down. It stayed down. The path down from the hills was steep in places, and she navigated it with her body rather than her eyes, adjusting her weight and her stride to the ground beneath her with the fluency of someone who has walked the same paths so many times that the walking has become something below the level of thought. He could feel her breathing, the expansion and contraction of it against the frame. Under a full load, on steep ground, her breathing was measured and controlled. She was strong in a way that was not about force, but about endurance. The deep, load-bearing strength of someone whose work has been physical all of her life. He drifted. That was the honest word for it. He was present, and then he was not. And the not present was not sleep exactly, but a kind of warm gray distance where the fever took up the space that thinking usually occupied. He was aware, distantly, of the quality of light changing. He was aware of the sound of the path changing under her feet, from soft pine duff to harder ground to something with loose stone on it. He was aware once of her voice, close to his ear, saying, "Hold on here, it is going to tilt." And he held on, gripping the frame with what strength he had, while she navigated something he could not see. Once, for reasons he could not have explained, he thought about his sergeant, Halt, and the bees. He thought about what it would be like to keep bees, to have something that required that kind of patient, consistent attention without offering you anything in return except the occasional honey and the occasional sting. He thought Halt might have understood something that Edric had not yet understood about what a person needed after certain kinds of experience. He came back to full awareness when she set him down against a stone wall in what turned out to be a small shepherd's hut, long unused, about halfway down the hill route. She unslung the frame and propped it against the wall and set him upright and looked at his face with the careful scrutiny of someone reading small print. "Still with me," she said. Not a question. "Still with you," he said. She gave him water. He drank it. His hands were shaking in a way he could not control, and she held the skin for him without comment, without making it into anything it did not need to be. "How far?" he said. 4 miles, she said. "We are halfway." "I am sorry," he said, "for the inconvenience." She looked at him for a moment. "Do not apologize for being sick," she said. "It is not useful." She ate some dried meat, and he watched her and tried to remember whether he was hungry. He decided he was not, and she did not insist, but she put a small piece of the hard cheese in the outside pocket of his coat, where his hand rested on the frame, in case he wanted it later. He noticed her doing this. He did not say anything about it. She helped him back into the frame, and they went on. He did not know how long they had been on the road when he heard voices ahead. Male voices, more than 2. The quality of sound changed as she stopped walking, the crunch of her steps going silent. And in that silence, he was aware again of how sick he was, of the way his head had its own interior weather, and how disconnected he felt from the ordinary business of the world. "There are men ahead," she said quietly. "What kind of men?" he said. "The kind with jurisdiction," she said, which told him everything. The valley road that led down to Halvard's mill had a checkpoint on it. He had known this in the abstract way you know things from maps and contracts, but he had not thought carefully about what it meant for a wolf woman to be carrying a sick human man down that road with goods to trade. The checkpoint was the edge of the Meridian Lowland Administration, and the Meridian Lowland Administration had opinions about wolfkin entering the valley towns that it had codified into a set of regulations that had been on the books since the end of the campaign, and that nobody had changed because nobody with the authority to change them had any particular reason to. "I have papers," she said. "Trade permit. It is current." She said this in the tone of someone reminding themselves of a fact, rather than reassuring him. "Do you want to put me down?" he said, "before we get there?" She was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. "That would be strange. You are cargo. Cargo is cargo." He thought about this. "Am I listed on your permit?" "You are now," she said. He heard the rustle of paper from inside her coat. "I have a ledger for goods. You're going in as miscellaneous freight." He said, "That is either very clever or very illegal. Both, possibly, she said. Stay quiet and look sick. That part will not be difficult, he said. There were 3 men at the checkpoint. The post was a low stone structure with a beam across the road and a brazier burning to one side. 2 of the men were young, the kind of young that had not yet been told to be afraid of anything. And one was older, built wide across the chest, wearing the armband of a valley constable. This older man looked at Dhruva the way people look at things that are technically legal, but that they have decided to be uncomfortable about anyway. "Trade permit," he said. She handed it to him, one-handed, the other arm bracing the frame. The constable looked at it. He looked at it longer than looking required. "What are you carrying?" he said. "Hides, salt, dried goods, 1 unit of miscellaneous freight for delivery in Halvard's mill," she said. The constable looked at Edric. Edric looked back at him with the sincere exhaustion of a man who has a fever and is strapped to a carry frame and has no energy remaining for anything other than existing. "What is wrong with him?" the constable said. "He has a delivery to make," Dhruva said. "He is unwell, but the delivery is time-sensitive. I am a faster route than waiting for him to recover enough to walk." The constable looked at the permit again. He looked at Edric again. He looked at Dhruva. And in his face, you could see the particular calculation of a man who has found something that bothers him and is working out whether it bothers him enough to do something about it, or whether the paperwork would be worse than the bother. "Where is your origin marker?" he said. "Wolf kin from the hill territories need an origin marker on the permit." "It is on the reverse," she said. He turned the permit over. He read the reverse. His jaw moved slightly, the way jaws move when people are reading something and do not want to admit they are reading it slowly. "This is from Magistrate Vorn's office," he said. "Yes," she said. "Vorn in the Upper District." "The same Magistrate Vorn, yes." There was a silence. Vorn's name on a document was the kind of detail that had weight, the kind of weight that translated directly into the constable's calculation of whether the paperwork would be worse than the bother. The constable handed the permit back. He did not look at Edric again. He did not look at Dhruva again. He said, "Pass," and stepped to the side of the road, and she walked past him and the 2 young men with the same unhurried stride she had maintained for 4 miles, and Edric watched the checkpoint recede behind them and did not say anything until it was out of sight. "Vorn," he said. "I do business with Vorn's district," she said. "He is a practical man. Practical men put their names on things when the price is right. You paid Vorn for that name on the permit. I paid Vorn for legitimate trade access, and he provided it through legitimate channels," she said. "Whether the name is worth more than the access is a secondary question." He thought about this. He thought about the Vorath campaign and the number of times he had watched men with documents get through doors that men without documents could not, and how the documents always seemed to cost something, and how the cost was always paid by the person who needed the door more than the door needed them. "That costs you money," he said. "Many things cost money," she said. "The checkpoint, the permit, Magistrate Vorn. Yes, every time you come down to trade." "Yes," she said, "every time." He was quiet for a while. His head was doing the thing it did when the fever peaked, where thoughts arrived without proper sequence, where the connection between one idea and the next was there, but you had to trust it rather than see it. He thought about what it would cost over a year. He thought about the margin on hides and dried goods. He thought about the arithmetic of existing in a place that required you to pay for the right to exist in it, every time, reliably, without exception. He did not say any of this. There was nothing useful to say. They reached the edge of the valley settlement in what he later calculated was just under 2 more hours. He had drifted again in the last stretch, and what brought him back was the sound of Dhruva's feet on cobblestones, the hollow knock of it after so many miles of dirt and pine duff, and the smells of the settlement, smoke and animal, and the particular complex smell of human habitation in quantity. She carried him directly to an inn on the main road. The inn was called the Copper Hinge. She had been there before. He could tell by the way she went straight to the side entrance without hesitation, the entrance to the yard rather than the front door. She set the frame down with careful precision in the yard and crouched to help him out of the harness. And when he was standing, or approximately standing, with one hand on the stone wall of the yard, she looked at his face again with that same reading small print attention. "Can you stand for a few minutes?" she said. "I think so," he said. "I am going to find the innkeeper," she said. "Stay here." She left the yard through a door, and he stood against the wall and breathed. The air was warmer here, or at least less cold, and the wall was solid against his back. And he was grateful for both of these things in the simple, wordless way that you are grateful for solid things when you have been sick and carried for 10 miles by a stranger. She came back with the innkeeper, a woman of about 50, with short gray hair and hands that suggested she had been working with them her entire life. The innkeeper looked at Edric, looked at Dhruva, and said nothing of particular consequence. She had a room available. She had a room available because Dhruva had evidently paid for it in advance at some previous point, kept on account for when she came down to trade. The innkeeper said this with the brisk efficiency of someone reporting a business arrangement, which was what it was. "He needs a physician," Dhruva said. "There is one on the cross street," the innkeeper said. "Meldra. She's competent." "I know Meldra," Dhruva said. "Will you send for her?" "I will send the boy," the innkeeper said. They put Edric in the room. It was small and had a low ceiling and a bed with enough blankets, and Dhruva helped him into it in the same way she had done everything else, with the economy of someone who does not linger over necessary tasks. She put his pack on the floor beside the bed. She put the piece of hard cheese from his coat pocket on the small table by the bed. "The physician will come," she said. "You should drink water. There is a jug." She indicated the jug. "The Factor Morn's address is 3 streets north of the inn. When you are better, someone from the inn can take your delivery." "You know Morn," he said. "I know of Morn," she said. "He's also a practical man." "You seem to know a lot of practical men," he said. "You have to," she said simply. "In my situation, you have to." She moved toward the door. He watched her. She had set the carry frame in the corner of the room, and the pack she had been carrying on her other shoulder, her own goods, was presumably still in the yard. She was turning to go back to the work that she had come down to do, the trading and the permits, and the magistrate Vorn's name on documents, and the side entrances, and the arithmetic of existing in a place that charged you for it. "Dhruva," he said. She stopped. "I do not know what to say," he said. "I am too sick to say what I want to say. When I am better, I will say it properly." She looked at him for a moment. There was something in her expression that was not quite a smile, but occupied the same territory. The softening of features that happens when a person recognizes something true. Her amber eyes were warm in the low light of the room, warmer than the light itself. "You do not have to say anything," she said. "You are alive. That is sufficient for now." She left. The physician Meldra came within the hour. She was a spare, methodical woman who smelled of herbs and carried a bag worn smooth with use. And she examined Edric with competent hands and told him what he had already suspected, which was that he had been fighting something in his lungs for at least a week, and that the creek had been the final insult. She gave him medicines and instructions and told him he would need 2 days of rest minimum before he was fit to go anywhere, and that if he tried to leave before then, she would hear about it and be displeased. He stayed 2 days. On the second day, the fever broke, and he slept for 11 hours and woke up weak but clear-headed, the kind of clear that feels like a room after a window has been opened. Everything slightly more present, slightly more itself. He asked after Druva at the inn. The innkeeper told him she had finished her trading and gone back up to the hills, which was what she always did. She came down perhaps once in 5 weeks, sometimes less in the deep cold. She had a territory up there, the innkeeper said, where she hunted and gathered and managed her traps, and she had been doing it for 6 years at least, since before the innkeeper had owned the Copper Hinge, so she could not say how long exactly. "Does she live alone?" he said. "As far as I know," the innkeeper said. "She does not talk about it." He thought about this. He thought about the shelter with its small stove and its clay cup in the niche in the wall and its smell of years of absorbed wood smoke. He thought about the carry frame, built by someone who had learned through the experience of carrying things over difficult ground, exactly how weight should be distributed and secured. He thought about the permit with Magistrate Vorn's name on it, and what that permit cost and what it represented, and the fact that she had simply carried that cost every time without complaint and without stopping. He delivered the documents to the factor Morn, who was indeed a practical man and did not ask questions about the condition of the delivery or the delay, and who paid the agreed fee without discussion. Edric stood in the factor's office afterward and held the fee in his hand and thought about the arithmetic. He went back to the Copper Hinge. He found the innkeeper. "The room she keeps on account," he said. "What does that cost?" The innkeeper told him. "I would like to add to it," he said. "Enough for a year, and I would like her not to know it was me." The innkeeper looked at him for a moment. "She is a proud woman," she said. "I know," he said. "I am not doing it to diminish her. I am doing it because she carried me 10 miles in a fever and used her own room that she had already paid for, and then went back to work. I am doing it because the arithmetic is wrong, and I cannot fix the arithmetic, but I can do this." The innkeeper was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She will notice. Tell her the inn had a surplus," he said, "from a previous booking. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. Just do not tell her it was me." He was aware, even as he said it, that this was possibly not the right thing to do. He was aware that Druva was not a woman who needed her expenses managed by someone she had done a kindness for, that she had been navigating her situation with competence and ingenuity for years before he fell through a creek. He was aware that the gesture was at least partly about him, about his need to do something with the thing he was feeling, which was a complicated knot of gratitude and recognition, and something that resembled distantly longing, not for something past, but for something he had not known to look for until now, something that had amber eyes and a hard-pressing hand and a practical answer to a problem he thought had no practical answer. But he thought about the cheese she had put in his coat pocket, the small practical forethought of it, the fact that she had done it without mentioning it, without making it into anything it was not. She had simply understood that he might want it later and put it where he could reach it. He thought that perhaps there was a way to do the same thing. He went back to the road, or rather, he went back to the kind of movement that served him in the place of staying still, and he took more contracts and walked more roads and slept in more cold rooms. And the seasons turned in the way seasons do, without permission and without ceremony. He thought about Dhruva more than he had expected to. He thought about her in a way that was becoming harder to call merely practical. He thought about the checkpoint and the constable and the permit with Magistrate Vaughan's name. He thought about the word she had used, jurisdiction. She had used it with the precise inflection of someone who has had cause to understand it very well. He thought, too, about the things she had not said. She had not said that carrying him was a sacrifice. She had not said that she hoped he was grateful. She had not said anything designed to make him aware of what she had done, because she had not been doing it to make him aware. She had looked at a problem and solved it, and the solution happened to involve putting another person's body on her back and walking 10 miles. And afterward, she had gone to do her trading and gone back up the hill. He thought about Halt and the bees. He thought about what it would take to pay attention to something the way bees demanded attention. Not because the bees needed him particularly, because the work required it. In the following spring, he came back to the valley. It was not only because of Dhruva. There was a run of contracts in the region, and the road was good in spring, and he had reasons. But he was aware that one of the reasons was that he wanted to see how the arithmetic had settled. He went to the Copper Hinge. The innkeeper told him Dhruva had been down twice since winter, and that the account surplus had confused her the first time, but that she had accepted it, and that she had not asked questions after the innkeeper explained the booking surplus. She added to it herself, the innkeeper said. Second visit. Put in enough for 6 months more. So now there is more than there was when you added your year. He stood there and thought about this. She knows, he said. She knows something, the innkeeper said. She did not ask what. She just put the money in and told me she had a good season. He stayed at the Copper Hinge for 4 days, waiting on the timing of a contract. On the 3rd day, he went up the hill road, not all the way to the shelter, just to the point where the trail split, and the upper branch led into the territory where she hunted and worked. He stood at the split for a while, and then he came back down. He left a note at the inn with the innkeeper in case Dhruva came down while he was still in the region. The note said, "I owe you a conversation when you have time for one. I do not know that I have anything useful to offer, except that I am on this road regularly now, and I would not mind the company, on the parts of it where company is possible. No obligation. I am aware you do not need anything from me. I am asking anyway." He signed it with his name and the symbol from the strap buckle, because she had already read that once and would know what it meant. He went back to the road. He came through the valley again in midsummer. There was a note waiting for him at the copper hinge, brief and written in a precise hand that pressed hard on the letters the way people write when they are not used to paper as their primary medium. It said, "The trail above the checkpoint is better in summer. If your contracts bring you this way, the shelter has a second bench." That was all. He read it twice. He folded it and put it in his coat. He thought about the second bench in the shelter, which he had noticed, the bench along the opposite wall from the one he had sat on while she made tea. It was there, and he had assumed it was simply there, that the shelter had been built for two people, or that the second bench was for storage, or simply what happened when you had extra wood. He had not thought about it as a choice. He thought about it as a choice now. He thought about it as an invitation. There is a thing that happens between people sometimes, and it begins before either of them has named it. It is not announced. It is not decided in any single moment. It is the thing that happens when two people recognize in each other a quality of attention they have not found elsewhere, and decide, without making a declaration of it, to keep finding reasons to be in the same territory, to leave notes, to add to accounts, to mention in precise handwriting that there is a second bench. Edric Hone had not planned to find this. He had not planned much of anything since the Vorath campaign, which had reorganized his sense of what planning was for. He had simply walked roads and taken contracts and kept moving. And on one bad afternoon, he had stepped through ice and sat down against a boulder and found himself in front of a problem he could not solve by himself. Dhruva had solved it, practically, without sentiment, with a carry frame and a clay cup and a piece of hard cheese in a coat pocket. He would learn, over the years that followed, that she had her own losses, not identical to his, not symmetrical, not the kind of grief that made for easy comparison, but real and old, and carried in the way people carry things that are heavy enough to require constant adjustment. She had left a larger community in the hill territories to the east, had come to this smaller range alone for reasons that she offered in fragments over time, the way you offer things when you have learned to be careful about what you give and to whom. He did not press. He had his own fragments. They compared notes occasionally, but more often they simply walked portions of the same road and let the walking be what it was. She taught him which crossings held in late season and which did not. He carried messages for her to contacts in the valley towns when his contracts took him there. Letters written in that hard-pressing hand that could not go through the checkpoint post, because the checkpoint post had opinions about correspondence from certain origins. He did this without making it into a service. She received it without making it into a debt. That was the arrangement. He did not know how to name what they were to each other in the beginning. He was not sure naming it was the right ambition. By the time a name became unavoidable, when he came down from the hill shelter one morning into the valley to collect a contract, and the innkeeper looked at him with the particular knowing expression of a woman who has watched something unfold over several seasons and is not surprised. He did not argue with what the name was. What he knew was that the second bench in the shelter had a blanket on it now, a heavy one, kept for when he passed through. What he knew was that her amber eyes across a fire were one of the things he navigated toward, the way you navigate toward a fixed point when the light is failing. It was a policy and a choice rather than a sentiment. The same way the permit and the room on account were policies and choices, the practical architecture of a life that has decided to include something. People in Halvard's Mill had opinions about it. People had opinions about most things in Halvard's Mill, which was a small enough settlement that the opinions of most people overlapped considerably. Some of the opinions were about jurisdiction, about whether a wolf woman with a hill permit should have the kind of regular presence in the valley trade that Druva had developed over the years, about whether the permit system was being used as it was intended, about Magistrate Vorn and his name on documents. Some of the opinions were about Edric specifically, about what kind of man kept that kind of company. He heard these opinions. He did not give them his full attention. He had learned in the Vorath campaign that opinions about who should be where and with whom had a poor record of accuracy, and that the people who stated them most confidently were rarely the people who had to live with the consequences. What he gave his full attention to was the road, to the contracts that gave him reason to move, to the weight of the oilskin pouch in his pack that held the documents he was carrying, and the weight of the other things he was carrying that had no pouch and no buckle with his name on it, to the trail above the checkpoint in summer, where the ground was firmer and the sight lines were longer, and the work of moving through the world required a quality of attention that, practiced long enough, could become something that resembled peace. He was not whole. He did not claim to be whole. But there is a difference between not being whole and being without recourse, and somewhere between a frozen creek and a shelter with a stove and 2 benches, he had found the difference. He never forgot that he had been too sick to say thank you. He never forgot that she had not waited for him to say it. She had gone back to her work with the equanimity of someone who does a thing because it is the right thing to do, and who understands that gratitude, when it comes, will find its own form and its own timing. He hoped he had found adequate forms. He suspected she would tell him if he had not. He thought this was, in fact, one of the better things about her. What Edric Holm learned in the years after a frozen creek and a fever and a carry frame built by someone who understood the proper distribution of weight was something that sounds simple when you say it and is not simple at all when you live it, which is that the people who help you most are often the ones with the least obligation to help you, and that this is not a coincidence. People without obligation have to make a choice. And the choice, when it comes from a person who has their own costs and their own permits and their own arithmetic, is a clearer thing than any charity, any debt, any officially sanctioned kindness offered along prescribed channels. She saw a problem. She solved it. She went back to work. He was not sure what it said about him that it had taken most of his adult life to understand what that kind of person was worth. He was not going to waste the remainder of it on a question. If you are walking a road that you have walked before and it is going badly, it is not weakness to stop. It is not weakness to sit down against a boulder and wait for the situation to clarify. Sometimes what clarifies it is unexpected. Sometimes what clarifies it does not look like what you were expecting and does not carry any of the markers you were told to watch for. Sometimes it has amber eyes and a hard-pressing hand and a practical answer to a problem you thought had no practical answer. Sometimes the best thing that was ever done for you was done without declaration, without drama, and in a form so plain and functional that you almost missed what it was. Almost. But not quite. Not if you were paying attention. Pay attention. If this story reached something in you, if it reminded you of a kindness given or received that was never properly acknowledged, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Leave a comment about a time someone carried something for you when you could not carry it yourself. It does not have to be 10 miles. It just has to be true.